We'll give folks a chance to step up to the mic. Go ahead, sir.
That's good.
Robert, I've been in Ann Arbor a long time, and I guess one thing Mr. Krutko mentioned, talented knowledge workers, and Ann Arbor has been on a couple of lists at least, for retirement, and there's a lot of, so we say, mature workers in town. Have you given any thought to, I don't know, encouraging companies that, would be a little less high-tech and high-focused, but, could still use, talented knowledge workers? And I really admire what Zingerman's and Think Local First. I really think they're in tune with a lot of Ann Arbor. That's just my comment on that. Thanks.
The array of experienced talent here is very, very important. That we do connect through the way we structure working with early stage companies to bring experienced, I'm going to use that phrase, experienced talent that has been in business, has started multiple businesses, may have failed at doing various things, to bring their experience to help the new early stage companies grow. So that's an important part of what we do. The other thing I would tell you is that's a conscious strategy that many communities have employed, and it's something that it's a great idea and something we should explore. Colleagues of mine working in Sarasota, Florida, discovered that their economic development strategy should very much be based on the fact that the high net worth retirees in that community were ripe to get off the golf course and start helping create new companies. So it is a conscious strategy and something that we would like to nurture.
I have two questions or two areas of concern. I can understand why people go to Chicago, given all which is there, and I'm wondering how a community at our size can keep the college graduates here, can keep the young people in the community here. Is it that we have to bring more businesses here so there are places for them to work? Or do we have businesses which are unable to find workers? And that brings me to my second interest, and that is what can you tell us about the kinds of workers that are needed in Ann Arbor that businesses are looking for and can't find, so that we can work on developing a community building of those skilled workers. Governor Snyder talks about 70,000 unfilled jobs, but I've never heard really any description of what kind of jobs those are, and I'm curious about whether that's a problem here in Ann Arbor.
It is. If it's okay, then I answer the question. It is a problem. Pretty much every CEO who is engaged in either advanced manufacturing or IT or bioscience that we encounter, from the smallest company to the largest right now, is describing that they cannot fill jobs that they have. So that's a problem, but the point I want to make to you, it's a national problem. It's also a global problem. And so whatever community gets this right soon will have a distinct competitive advantage. So we're working with and convening the community college. Community college has a new leader, Rose Malanka. She's being very, very aggressive about trying to figure out programming to fill that gap. The best way I can describe it to you, and somebody told me this story the other day. I was over meeting with the new dean of the business school at EMU. And it has a lot to do with demographics and what happens at certain points in the economy. Our employers right now in IT are looking for people with 4 to 5 years experience who can run a project. They can find entry level, they can find mature managers, but they can't find people with 4 to 5, 6 years of experience. What the insight I got from the EMU school that focuses on training those kind of workers was there was a dot-com implosion. We all remember that. That was the recession before the last one in 2002. In this community, IT jobs fell out of favor, and people weren't applying to go to school there. And so for a period of time, there was a gap in enrollment. And if you play that forward in demographics, those people would have been now with 5 or 6 years of experience. So that's what the problem was. Nationally, around 2002, I worked in Silicon Valley then. Nobody remembers that recession. We lost 250,000 jobs in a single county in a single year. Everybody left Silicon Valley at that point. IT was over. So we're back trying to rebuild that pipeline of workforce. And it's hard work. It's difficult.
Well, my name is Pradeep Chaudhary. I ran the Center for Entrepreneurship at Eastern for 6 years. And then I went to India to set up the Indian Institute for Sustainable Enterprise. So my life mission is to save the earth now and really work on triple bottom line issues. My question is, probably have 2 or 3 different themes that I'm trying to weave into, which I think are very relevant here. Given that most jobs are created by smaller businesses, we continue to have a strong bias here towards VC-funded companies, venture capital-funded companies, and focus on the one entrepreneur that we want to make, that we want to be successful. What about the remaining 999 that can come up with different innovative business models, but will not have the hockey stick or be as successful as the VC-funded companies would be? And when you look at different kind of industry verticals that we could look at, agriculture is probably the second largest industry, and there's a lot that we can do when we talk about local dollars, local cents, ballet, and small businesses. Energy conservation is another big area, and obviously renewable energy goes with that. Makers, which is outside here, do your own design, do your own manufacturing. I think there's some interesting room for them. And I think one of the most important areas where we could possibly pay some, where we should give some attention to is, coming back from Bangalore, India, I found that there is really no sensitivity to the problems that the 6 billion people face, and we could possibly have some very interesting solutions here that we could come up with. So identifying some of those problems and seeing if we can really build some bridges, I think would be another interesting area. So the question here is, how do you really drive some kind of a balance between VC-funded versus others? And when I looked at your slides, not only focusing on the areas that have already been identified by the government, by the state government, but also at things like agriculture, energy conservation, and so on, which are extremely important when you look at triple bottom line issues. Thank you.
Just speaking to a little bit of what you said, I do wear the hat of BALI, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, and our strategy is to look in communities at where the leakage is and what activities and products are being having to go. Do you have to go outside of that community in order to get? And it's not all high tech. We talk about local manufacture of energy and local manufacturing of housing and local manufacturing producing of food and also clothing. And we think that we believe that the middle class is the entrepreneurial class, and that public policy should start to look at that and change so that it's helping promote the entrepreneur to go into business. We understand, that access to that capital is the VC funders are, they're looking at, they want something that is going to start out and ramp up quickly so that there can be a liquid event, and then they take that wealth out, and that wealth doesn't stay in a community. And what we're interested in is entrepreneurs that are going to open up your local grocery store, your barber shop, your manufacturing clothes locally, starting to produce energy more and more locally, and to start to have public policy that helps fund those projects rather than the large projects that communities have been doing for a long time with, that they want to curry the favor of large corporations with tax incentives, maybe lax application of zoning and environmental standards in order to, and you're, with the promise of jobs, and you can put a price on how much that is per job. And what we find is that those companies come to town, and when they can produce and distribute a product more cheaply somewhere else, they abandon. They've bled the local treasury dry, and a lot of times they've scorched the land, they've lowered the standard of living, and we're left with nothing. And so, what we're asking is that if, level that playing field and make that money that you would try to interest large companies to come and large manufacturers, and make that available for people in your community, in the community that are willing to start local businesses and that are going to stay there. That's what we think is the antidote to what's going on now.
If I could just add briefly, so I think that folks are catching on to the concept that public policy needs to move in a direction of really sort of democratizing capital. And so certainly locally, I do work for Washtenaw County and certainly work closely with the city of Ann Arbor. Policymakers locally are investing in strategies to figure out both what can happen already or what we can sort of facilitate happening to create local investment options for all of you. I think that we think about venture capitalists and we think about government strategies, both of which are really important financing mechanisms for businesses of all kind. But in this community, especially throughout the county, we have 350,000 people in Washtenaw County, many of whom are very interested in accelerating our own community. How can, I see Angela in the back, so I don't want to talk too much because she's the expert, but we're really working on exploring strategies so that we can roll out ways and share with you, here's how you can invest in this local business. Here's how you can know about investment options, which businesses might be good investments for you, maybe others have vetted them. So we are exploring strategies. I think that certainly local policymakers have certainly caught on to the idea that growing local businesses, whether they are businesses that sell things outside the region or they are more of the lifestyle businesses, those things make sense. And they're not always quick, giant returns immediately, but people are moving in that direction. So there certainly is light on that horizon.
Yeah, just to add, really wanting there's major barriers to being able to invest in your local community. How, all of you have some, I imagine, have some form of qualified retirement account, right? What percentage is invested locally? 0. Okay, but if you wanted to take all that money out and go down to the MGM Grand in Detroit, and you walked in there, nobody is going to go up to you and ask you if you're a qualified investor. And nobody is going to give you a prospectus and tell you what the risk of going up to the craps table is. Okay, but if you want to invest a couple $1,000s in, Joe Smith's convenience store that he's going to open, and he wanted to go out and advertise that, everybody's doing something illegal. That's what we really want to change.
So just to play that at a different scale, President of the university looked at their investment portfolio. All universities have endowments. And about 10% of it is invested into sort of high technology, knowledge-based companies. And she asked her advisors recently in the last 2 years to look at, had they invested in their own group of startups here in Ann Arbor, what the return would have been versus the investments they were making in Silicon Valley and Boston. And she discovered that the yield would have been much higher. You heard Jan Garfinkel on the video, who is a local venture capitalist, getting back to the question here, and she will tell you the same thing, that the return on investing in companies locally, and these are not the kind of companies that Paul's talking about, but they still are local companies that hire in 2s and 3s and 10s to 100, the yield would be much better if the investments were made here locally. So it plays at both ends of the scale.
Hi, thank you very much to you all for coming. It's good to see you, good to listen to you. My question is for all of you individually and your organizations, and I'd like to get an idea of what each of your organizations are doing in regards to a particular issue related to local infrastructure. It has to do with technological infrastructure, a sense of place, a locale where talent wants to be. I happened to see a segment of last week's episode of Bill Moyer's Journal, and they did a little summary on the state of broadband internet access in the United States compared to South Korea, Singapore, Northern Europe, Western Europe, and all that. And so my question is, to each of you, please, what are each of your organizations doing to attempt to free Ann Arbor from the strangle of Comcast? Right now, maybe people aren't aware of it. In South Korea, in New York, you get a tenth of what you can get in South Korea at 8 times the price. Manhattan, New York, the best you can get in Manhattan residential, other than the T1 or something like that, right? So it's really bad here, right?
Well, we're in the stranglehold of Comcast
Right, well,
as an organization.
right, the practical monopoly they have
Yeah.
in Ann Arbor. What are you doing?
So
Spark.
well, okay, so we are in conversations with the city. The city recognizes, now I'm not going to get into the question of who provides or what. Spark's view of the world is we're a public-private partnership. We have business, government, and the academic institutions at the table. So we don't call out particular companies or we don't call out particular positions. But we recognize that the problem exists. We also have a problem with even a basic utility here, and that's electricity. We have companies who run very, very sophisticated tests that if the power goes off for any period of time, it destroys a $350,000 project. So infrastructure in this region is absolutely paramount to our success. And broadband is an issue. We think that we need to increase as you described it, the availability, the speed, and the quality of it.
For residential, right? You know, a place where talent wants to be.
Well, let me get to that point, because one of the things that in this whole discussion of local business that people miss sometimes is we have a substantive number of people who are running home-based businesses who are consultants, who are working on major projects with other places all over the world, that they're working out of their homes, right? And there's some estimates in a knowledge place like Ann Arbor, this is a New Mexico study, that there could be 25% of our GDP in those home-based businesses that aren't, I'm not talking about selling Tupperware, I'm talking about selling, engineering or something like that. Those folks need the broadband. And so we've had conversations with the city of Ann Arbor about how do we facilitate the growth of the capacity. Now, the provider.
Competition?
Well, I'm not, that's not my call, okay?
Right.
All I'm saying to you is at Spark, we're going to focus on, our board's going to focus on what does the community need to be a successful competitor? And we need more broadband. Let me even go further.
It's a moving target,
The
It's-
western part of the county, if this is an Ann Arbor-based audience, you have service. In the western part of the county, there are places that you can't get cell service, let alone any other kind of service. So think about that as a deterrent to moving forward. And the other point is, somebody raised about agriculture. it's the number 2 industry in the state of Michigan. And it's right outside our boundaries, and that is becoming more high-tech as we speak. Tractors and seed planting and all that controlled by GPS. You need broadband technology, right? So your point's well taken.
Other folks with questions?
Any
Go
other
ahead.
organizations?
Sir, we have some other folks with questions, so
Right.
let's move on.
So none of the other organizations are doing anything in regards to?
So the county is also looking at broadband access
Yeah.
for the Western County
Yeah.
especially.
Hello. Hi. When I was listening, I thought you brought up a very good point, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name. And it was the point of the youth. I'm 26, and I just moved here about in July, so not even a year ago. And when I came, I instantly fell in love. I got a very good job over at the VA hospital, and it was great. But when I first told my friends, majority of them are in Chicago, and the other half are in Royal Oak, and then San Fran, and you name it. But anyway, a lot of them just immediately were drawn to big cities, and they were like, college town. Are you going to go out and be with undergrads all the time? And it's truly not. I just came from Fraser's Pub, and it's quite towny. So have you noticed a lot of talented people my age be hesitant to coming here, even though U of M brings wonderful resources, but because it is here as well? And what can we do to advertise? I mean, I've been trying to do my own little things. I do restaurant blogs. I mean, I'm kind of like an internet nerd trying to boost Ann Arbor, but what can we do as a community?
Well, I mean, that really is the issue. I mean, Ann Arbor is just a great city to live in. But, I mean, I think what they're looking at, and you're absolutely right, and I've got 2 daughters, I mean, they grew up here. They were looking for a much bigger urban experience, and they weren't finding that in Detroit because they weren't finding, the density, the walkability, the transit, like I mentioned before. Now, that doesn't to say that we're not going to get there with Detroit. I do really believe that we will. But meanwhile, obviously they're choosing. I mean, Ann Arbor gets, particularly for people who've grown up here, I think for our kids, when they want that experience, this gets a little small for them. But I think, we've got a world-class university right here, and we're losing half of our students, that we can't retain them. And so I think that is our challenge. But again, I go back to regional, that's why I think it's so important for Detroit to succeed, because how cool is that to live 45 miles away from Detroit? What if we could take a fast train there, a really fast train, and not have it take forever? I mean, how would that change? That would completely change this, Ann Arbor, and it would change Detroit. So, I don't know what short of offering to pay all their, student loans or something, I mean, but I mean, that is the $1 million question. And I think those are things we have to figure out. I think a lot come back. I think at least one of my daughters will eventually maybe come back. But she said, I'd probably go live in Royal Oak, so, yeah, just because she grew up here.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a completely different perspective. Down Liberty Street, there is a cluster of very significant high-tech companies, and they are having no problem hiring young people and retaining them. The issue for them is they want to live in downtown. They don't want to drive a car. And what we have, there's no criticism intended, but when I listen to the discussion at City Council, I don't hear a response to that. So there are young people who want to stay here and live here, but they want to live in downtown or close to downtown, and we need to create the opportunities for them. We're building student housing. We're building undergraduate housing. You tell me where a young professional who is out of school and has a job at Google is going to find a place to live close to downtown. That's a real issue. I hear this all the time. Young people are leaving. Young people leaving. Yeah, they're 500. The alumni database for the University of Michigan is 500,000 people. There's only 110,000 in Ann Arbor. Yes, people are going to go here to school and they're going to graduate. A lot of them are going to go someplace else. But a lot of them want to stay and they want to stick, and we aren't creating the environment for them to do that.
I didn't want to drive. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to drive, so I'm a bus taker. But the reason that got me to do that is the VA offers free bus passes because parking is horrendous. So if that's something more businesses want to consider, I mean, it would make my bus more crowded, but it worked and I love
Yeah, the
it.
Downtown Development Authority offers that, and so that is available to anybody that works downtown. So it's already available.
I'm just curious where she moved. Where did you move from?
Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland.
I'm from Saginaw, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And we
We're
do
glad
have
to have you
time
in
for,
town.
Yes.
for
One
one
more
more question, if that's
Great.
okay.
I want to just piggyback on the local investment options or non-options that we have. When are we going to have options? How fast is this going to be happening? How can we support that happening faster? I looked into some of where my retirement money is. I was appalled. And I said, I can't stand this. What's next for this?
Angela, you going to answer that for her?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a little short discussion. Janine and I know each other. So to answer everybody's question, and it's really to Paul's point, we have some very serious legal barriers. And to let you know who I am, I'm Angela from Reconsider. We're actually one of the Spark East incubating tenants. So thank you, Paul, for doing what you're doing, because we exist because you guys exist. So, so there are very significant barriers to investing locally, and we are financial professionals. We went rogue from the industry to really service this entire conversation, all the PowerPoints you guys had, the financial services, the financial advising piece of all of that, to actually help people bring their capital back home and invest in their own communities with their careers and their capital and their energy and all of that. So, so we're on the work group with Washtenaw County, with Mary Jo Callan, in terms of looking at what the options are that the county could pursue or that other people in the community could pursue, to see really what our options, all of our options are. Crowdfunding will be coming eventually, equity crowdfunding, and we're starting to teach workshops in the community about that, because there's a lot of questions and a lot of confusions, but the SEC hasn't even issued the rules for that yet. So that could be another year away. That's really the closest we have. But I'm glad that Janine asked her question and that Dr. Chowdhury asked his question, because this is what we hear in the streets a lot, so to speak. And we're glad that Spark is doing what they're doing, but it does, you guys service, a lot of people service those high-tech, high-growth, as Dr. Chowdhury said, hockey stick businesses, and there's a lot of other businesses that support those businesses and support the people who work at those businesses. So, anyways.
Thanks, Angela. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to our panelists, and Tim, thanks again to the library.
And I just wanted to say there was a whole line of people with more questions, and I did want to say that next Wednesday night at the Pittsfield branch at 7 o'clock, the conversation can continue, because it's going to be more of a discussion format where people can just sit down and ask questions, and much more relaxed format. So we hope to see you there Wednesday night at the Pittsfield branch at 7.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So, you know,